Hello, everybody. This is SyncPartner Series, and we have a special guest with us today, Luis. Luis, I will not be able to say your last name properly, so if you want to go ahead and pronounce it, that would be awesome.
That's okay. My name is Luis.marroquin.
Marroquin, that's great. We are so happy to have you here on our podcast today, Luis. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course, I'm glad to be here.
And just a little bit of an introduction for Luis. Luis is making an amazing effort towards bringing a safe place for men's healing. And he has a men's healing circle that monthly, weekly gets together in San Francisco, in Oakland, and also in Concord in California. So if you're interested to know more after our conversation here today with Luis, we will be sharing his contact information on the screen, so you can, definitely get in touch with him. So let's get to know a little bit more about our guest today. Luis, tell us a little bit about your work and what you do at the Peaceful Warriors.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Mehreen, for having me here on your video. And a little bit about me. I was born in Bogota, Colombia. My family migrated in the Bay Area in the late '60s, and yeah, about 7 years ago, started the Peaceful Warriors. We're a group of men dedicated to providing safe space for men of color, and also, through providing this safe space, our hope is that trust could be built where the men could feel comfortable enough to open up and talk about their feelings, and reconnecting with loving themselves and taking care of themselves in a healthy way. And I feel that's a very revolutionary thing that could be done, especially in this day and age. So, about 8 years ago, I myself was in these spaces of circles, ceremony, where we do a lot of talking. You could call it group therapy, but I was under the mentorship of a woman of color, an elder, a healer, and in my language is called a curandiera, which means a woman healer. And through her her teachings, which is rooted in Mesoamerican practices in our Latino community, um, using the power of sitting in a circle where we're all equal, no one's greater than, no one's lesser than, and also using these symbols, these tools, where it's like creating an altar where we put symbols and images and flowers and anything that we consider that's important to us, and where we are allowed to focus the energy. And most importantly of all is for us to feel safe. And that's something that I learned very early on. For me, as a man of color, going through my healing journey, um, it was important for me to feel safe and to feel trust. And there was not a lot of spaces where I felt that. And so being in the space with Teresa, and learning that it's okay to be vulnerable and to open up, was the beginning journey of my healing, and then eventually creating the Peaceful Warrior, so I could pass on the teachings and pass on the gift that I received, and share with my brothers and my community.
Yeah, thank you. So just a little bit of a summary of background of how I ended up meeting Luis is, we at SyncPartner, we're creating a similar kind of like a platform where we want to address the issues that men and women have together when they're trying to have a family together, a life together, a healthy relationship together. And we have so much information, and we have so much of a data of how a lot of things can improve from the women perspective, that they can vent and they can have other spaces that are created for women to be able to heal and develop. But um, with our research at SyncPartner, we realized there's not a lot of space for men to come forward and be vulnerable and be feeling safe and be able to say whatever they want to, be able to be whoever they want to. And so, we got in touch with Luis, and we wanted to ask him certain questions about things, especially, when people talk about, when you have rifts in relationships and you want to heal, women are basically the ones that push the men to be like, let's go into couples therapy, or let's go find a solution for this. And a lot of men kind of push back, and they feel like they don't want to, or they're being pushed into something that's not maybe going to help them. And so it kind of made us question what it was, why men were not being so open to trying new things, like maybe a new app that can help them feel safe and help them kind of communicate better with their relationships. And so we ended up with Luis, and we wanted to find answers to what it was that was holding men back from taking those first steps, and kind of like moving into a space where they want to be open about trying new things to help them improve their relationships.
Yeah, that's I get asked that a lot. Like, what is it about men do that just have a resistance to healing? And I think there's a lot of um, I think there's a lot of reasons why, but I think the main one that I see is that our society and depending where you were brought up and where you're from, or what culture that you identify with, I think uh, has not normalized and created safe spaces for men
Mhm.
to be around other men, and normalizing the language around self-care, self-love, self-honesty. Men do not congregate and say, hey, let's talk about our feelings, let's process this, and let's really dive into like our pain story. Like, we weren't brought up, at least I was not brought up that way, and I didn't feel like the school I went to, my family, and my friends that I hung out with, like, we didn't do that. Women did that, and we were taught that only women do that, and it's okay for them to do that. So that also started teaching us that if we do that, then there's something very feminine about us. We could be gay, we could be weak, and so it's always associated as a sign of weakness. So in this hyper masculine culture that we live in, to be a man, quote unquote, is to be strong, is to be silent, and is to be a provider and to carry on all the weight. And if things get too heavy and too much to bear, well, you just buckle down and you continue to move forward. And that is very self-destructive behavior.
Yep.
And because we don't have a way um, to release and to talk about feelings, then we start going to coping mechanisms.
Yep, and that's one of the things that we're making sure that even with our app, we're adding, like, visual representations, numerical values, whatever we're getting research in terms of like how we can help men kind of feel connected to a space where they're comfortable in sharing. Let's talk a little bit about vulnerability, because I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges men tend to kind of fall into, where they don't know how to deal with their vulnerability. Or, last time we talked, we were talking about how it's conditioned from a very young age. Like you were saying, you have to bottle up, you have to keep it inside. But with science and research, vulnerability is actually the first step towards healing. Vulnerability is actually accepting yourself as who you are, and the good and the bad and everything inside it. So let's talk a little bit about vulnerability. What is vulnerability been taught to men, and how can they overcome this most difficult challenge where they are conditioned to think that vulnerability is basically weakness?
Um, Again, it goes back to the culture and the society not normalizing that it's okay to for a man of color, to talk about their emotions and to talk about things that are weighing heavy on them. And because we're not normalizing that, men struggle with communicating. The practice of vulnerability is the practice of self honesty. Self honesty deepens your self awareness of who you are and where you come from and why you feel the way you feel, why you're being triggered the way you're being triggered. And through that vulnerability and support system of other people being vulnerable, other men being vulnerable, then as a group of men, we could, one, start feeling we're not alone. Two, the relief of releasing this this
Hmm.
this weight that we've been carrying, and that is healing.
Hmm.
We might not know it at the time, but it is it's very, very powerful to be able to release. And through that process, we start to really practice the the self-awareness, the self-honesty.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
yeah, if you're not talking about your feelings, then you're doing a lot of deflecting, and there's a lot of not real feelings and communication, and it could be also very violent type of communication because you're being very defensive as a man of color.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a lot of the research we've done, we have figured that it's all inside us. And when we say that, people are like, what do you mean it's all inside us? And if we break it down a little bit, it literally means that you have to be sick and tired of your own drama. You have to be sick and tired of your own negative patterns. You have to be sick and tired of falling into the same, pit holes of falling down again and again. When you take that step and say, okay, I think I'm done. I think I'm done doing this again and again and causing all this pain around me, causing all this pain around for myself or my family, especially if you have children, especially if you have, families who are dependent on you. All of that healing, unhealed side, part of you, all of that stuff that you haven't able to manage, it kind of like bleeds into your kids, a generation after generation, and then they have to carry your weight, and then their children have to carry your weight. So it really comes down to one day you wake up and you say, that's it. That's enough. I am going to take one step towards something that I'm going to do, something that's going to be different from what I've been doing for so long. And that one step is basically, also understanding self awareness of what are my negative patterns? What are my triggers? How can I understand myself better? Like for women, or if I just speak generally for myself, I can say that, I can go for running and then take out all of this energy and then find myself centered again, or I can, go to the gym, or some sort of an exercise kind of centers me back. That's my own system that I've created for myself. Whenever I need to center back to myself, it's like different things that I know after years and years of constantly doing them, is now when I'm like, okay, I think if I continue doing this, it keeps me centered. But if I go in this direction, it doesn't keep me centered. So it all comes down to taking that first step where it's like, okay, I'm going to do something. And when you start seeking that, when you start seeking that healing, I truly believe that that healing starts seeking you too. And then you get those synchronicities where you bump into different people, or you hear certain things where it starts to direct you in the direction where it's going to take you into healing. And that's kind of like a simplified version of all this research that we've done for years and years and years of like how you can kind of walk into that path. But that first step needs to come from within, where it's like, there is something wrong with me. I have to accept that. And after accepting that, what are the next steps I need to take? And a lot of people think that they have to take like huge steps to kind of like create huge results, but it's actually those little teeny tiny steps that builds on to the next one. And for your circle, I feel like a lot of the men are finding that, you use a lot of different techniques, like drums. It's kind of like an alternate to therapy, from traditional therapies. And I think we try to cookie cut everyone into like, everyone needs couples therapy and they'll be fine. But it's like, well, not really. Everybody has different ways of healing and they need different things to heal them. And I guess when they come into your circle, can you talk a little bit about how you use drums and how you kind of facilitate the whole circle for them to start open up and feel connected?
Yes, there's different types of circles that we provide. We offer the monthly circle is offered to the average man of color that is trying to figure it out. They're not sure if they want to talk, they're not sure they want to open themselves up to healing, but they heard about us and they're taking a step to walking into our space. So, this space, the intention is to provide a safe space and to allow men to be vulnerable. And for them to be vulnerable, we model that. So, I
Mhm.
have seasoned peaceful warriors, men that have already been coming to the circle for a while, and we're comfortable about talking about our emotions and our struggles and our wins. And so we lead the circle by sharing first. And then through that, if the man feels comfortable enough, then they'll open up and share. You don't have to. There's always an option for you not to share. Just being there and listening and seeing and just experiencing a safe space and just where men are being vulnerable and talking about their feelings. Again, we're trying to normalize that.
Mhm.
It's okay. It's normal. It's what we
Mhm.
should be doing.
Mhm.
And so, and you're not obligated to come back. But
Mhm.
for us, it's always about keeping the circle consistent where men know that there is this place where they
Mhm.
could go. So I've seen men show up and I don't see them for 3 years and then they come back and then they stay with us. I've seen men come and leave, come and leave. And I see men that come and I never see them again. So for me as a facilitator, what I do with the Peaceful Warriors, my intention, my personal intention is not to focus on the outcome, but just be present with the intention of providing space because believing that what we're doing is so powerful that it
Mhm.
will plant a seed for this person, maybe not come back to us, but maybe go see a therapist or maybe go talk to a spiritual leader or open up to their partner or seek help somewhere else. So that's my personal hope,
Mhm.
which allows me to really focus on being present and just listening to the man. And as a facilitator, I guide the conversation. Um, and we also have the altar. We also have a talking stick. So if we're teaching men how to listen to each other and also to honor themselves being there. So the talking stick, when you hold the talking stick, you're gifting yourself the opportunity to express something that you normally won't talk to anybody about,
Yeah.
and you're going to release. And also teaches the other men that are sitting there to focus and pay attention to what this person is saying, not to think about what you're going to do after circle or what you're going to say. We always ask the men to please don't talk about what the person has shared or anything like that because you're taking away from you. This is an opportunity for you to share.
Mhm.
So, and I always say, if you feel, because as men, we use a lot of ways to deflect. So when it comes to your turn to talk, a good way to deflect is to give advice to the person who just shared. and that's a no-no. It's okay, but I always recommend, if you feel like doing that, please don't, and just wait till after the circle's done, so you could, with your whole heart and sincerely, approach that man and give him the suggestion, and maybe exchange numbers and create a bond and a support system with each other. And that's something that um, we're trying to cultivate that in these spaces. Is how do we support each other? How do we really listen to each other? And it's a process, and it won't happen in one or
Mhm.
two or three circles. This is a lifelong journey. So the monthly circles are for the newbies, for the guys that we don't do the heavy ceremony, we don't do the heavy work, because I'll scare these guys away. It's just very simple. We're here to just allow you to open up. Now, outside of the circle, I have more intense, more heavy work that we do, where we open up, or we go to a sweat lodge, or we do a drum circle. But this is, or we do a program where we've got an 8-10 week intense program where you're committed, and I call it spiritual boot camp. This is a man who's willing to do the work, and we're going to hit it hard. We're going to do everything under the sun to release as much as we can, and provide practical application tools for these men to use daily for the rest of their lives. So
This
those are
sounds
the
amazing.
that we have.
This
Thank
sounds
you.
so amazing. Yes, we don't have much of those. So it's so nice to hear that men will be able to, because I'm part of so many sweat lodges, and I'm part of so many women's circles, and sometimes, we just sit there and not even say anything, and it's just healing just to be in presence of people, knowing that they're feeling the same way, knowing that they're going through the same thing. It's just sitting in their presence, and seeing those number of people in front of you physically is a support, visual support right there. So I'm so glad that there are also more spaces opening exclusively for men, because I feel like they definitely need that. Talking of healing, I also wanted our viewers to kind of like know this thing, that, when we were having this conversation last time, we talked about healing is not a linear, path. It's not like you're going to take one small little step and that's going to take you straight to your goal that you're looking for. It's not going to be like that. Once you're going to, tell yourself that you're willing to do the work, when you mentally accept it, and when you mentally feel it in your heart that no matter what it is that's going to be set in front of me, I'm willing to do the work. The healing is not going to take you straight up. It's going to take you round and round, up and down. It's going to be a merry-go-round. It's going to take you left. It's going to take you right. And there are going to be times when you're going to feel like this is not working. It's not healing. I've been to like maybe 4 sessions already, and by now I should have had a better understanding of what I'm supposed to be doing to walk into this path of healing. It's so all over the place, but then eventually when you do all these infinite loops up and down, you start to understand that there are certain actions you need to take when you're in those loops. There's certain awarenesses that are brought to your attention when you're in those up and down spiral loops, and then you start to kind of hang over it, and then you take those little tiny steps towards that. How would you also describe that in the language of men healing? What does that look like? Like how would you describe that?
You're absolutely right. I always tell the men that, first and foremost, I try to empower them, to let them know that, I'm just a facilitator. I'm a healer in the sense that I'm healing myself, that I'm working on myself. I'm in the same journey as these men. Um, do I spend more time meditating? Yes. Do I read more books? Yes. Um, do I have a few support systems that support me in my personal, in my humanism, in my personal life? Yeah, um, but that took years. That's the
Mhm,
work that I do. So I just have more time under my belt, but I still struggle with mental
mhm,
issues. I still struggle with what's going on in the world. The world doesn't stop. The day is going to continue to happen, and there's stuff that still happens. Like My life is not perfect. I'm not a perfect man. In my human form, I'm still very. I struggle with a few things, but in a spiritual practice, I call it a spiritual practice because, um, without knowing, when I was trying to learn how to regulate my emotions by doing breathing techniques, when I was trying to not drink and do drugs. So I'm 14 years sober. Within those 14 years, I had to learn, well, what do I do when I'm not doing that?
Hmm.
What does healing look
Exactly.
like?
Hmm.
What am I doing? So on my personal journey, one thing that I learned is that to be patient with myself and to try everything at least once that has to do with self healing and with what works, and if it doesn't work, try something else. Just don't give up. Keep
Yep.
trying, keep doing it, and that's what I share with the men. Is because I let them know, like, eventually something's going to happen, and the word you could use is a connection to a higher power, a spiritual connection. Um, that starts to happen because if you really weren't connected with yourself, your self honesty, your self truth, um, then then the healing, I mean, real healing, um, that self honesty and self reflection, it's a beautiful thing. And it's sometimes hard to describe. So I tell the guys, like, you might not know what I'm talking about, but give it time. And then eventually you will sense something, a shift. And that I like to call it love,
Hmm.
the act of love.
Hmm.
Every time you decide, you know what? I'm going to go to that class. I'm going to go to SyncPartner. I'm going to read that book. I'm going to the Peaceful
Hmm.
Warriors. That's an act of love for
Hmm.
yourself. And
Hmm.
that is a spiritual act. You're taking a leap of faith in yourself and trusting that you have the capacity to heal yourself, to forgive yourself when you fall short, and to love yourself, to bring yourself back up. And that radiates around. And, not only are you healing, but the people around you are you know, you have an effect. And then eventually you stop being all me, because that's what happens.
Yeah.
A lot of men, we personalize this anger, this frustration, and we become really selfish and we're so self-involved, and it affects everybody around us. But when we're doing this work and we start to develop accountability and
Yep.
being honest with ourselves, so it's a mixture of a practice that you develop, and it becomes a spiritual practice, and you start to take accountability for your actions, and you start learning to right your wrongs and do better and just be a better person, not for your family, not for your community, but
Yeah.
first and foremost for yourself,
Hmm.
then for your family, then for your community. But it's all rooted in love, and that could mean whatever to anyone.
I think empathy and kindness and love is also projected differently through societies and cultures. Even though if you go back to ancient civilization and go back to all those cultures that have taught us is to start the yourself with love and empathy and kindness. And it's just gonna, and it's so highly contagious that the other person is not even gonna know what it touched it. It's just gonna be that kindness and love, and they're just gonna create a ripple effect to the rest of the people going on and on and on. Um, we also want to talk about generational trauma of, why, as men, you're projected to act and behave in a certain way. And we forget the actual role a man has been playing successfully for a while. And then we get this break in between where men are great fighters. They have great qualities of protecting. They have great qualities of providing. These are like their biggest assets. That's what they're built for. They're builders, they're lovers, they have so much wisdom and maturity to them if they are able to access that part of them. But the access to it has been kind of blocked because, they've been taught that if you're going to be fighters, this means you're fighting for, I don't know, something that the media is showing you, or something that's been brainwashed to you, and then you kind of like deviate from your actual purpose of what that fighting looks for you.
Yeah.
And then providing what that providing looks for you, it doesn't always mean that you're working day and night, in and out, just to provide for your family. You're also providing for the emotional needs of your kids. You're also providing for emotional needs of your a wife or a partner or something. There's so many different layers of what providing means and what protection means, even sometimes protection from your own selves, from your own negative patterns. And I think media and just, this kind of the shift of being lost, it has kind of deviated men from like their actual roles, like what roles they have to play as a man in
I
society.
feel like gender roles is a tricky thing. I personally believe that what women could do, men could do, and what men could do, women could do. Obviously, we cannot, birth a child, but men could be as creative, as nurturing, and
Mm-hmm.
as empathetic and
Mm-hmm.
compassionate as women.
Yep.
Women can be as strong as and as builders, as he said,
Mm-hmm.
as pretty much women could do whatever a guy could do. I've seen it, we've seen it, and I think in this day and age where we're transcending from hunter gatherer, our ancestors, they knew there were roles. Obviously a man could probably take down a bear, and so he's going to go out there and forage, and women, because of it's dangerous. I mean, I'm sure there was women warriors
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, but they prepped the food, took care of the kids. But I believe that they didn't look at it as
Mm-hmm.
the way we look at it.
Yes.
They
Yes.
looked at it as this is something that we're all doing, and they still communicated. They weren't violent with each other, like the partnership between the the man and the woman. It was not a nuclear relationship like what we have now. They were very communal, where everybody was raising the child, everybody was in healthy communication, everybody had an understanding what the relationships were with each other, within
Mm-hmm.
themselves, and with nature and spirituality. So it was a very healthy ecosystem that they had. And I feel that we're disconnected from that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I bring in my personal life, and also with the peaceful warriors. I'm not here to change the way anyone thinks. Try to practice non-judgment all the time, as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that we talk about. It's like what does it mean to be a man?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of unpacking right there, because as I said before, this society that's hyper masculine, rooted in toxicity,
Mm-hmm.
uh, are giving us a roles at a very young age,
Mm-hmm.
and and then identity is a big part of the healing. As an individual, and as a community, as Luis, myself, who am I? You know,
Mm-hmm.
who am I? And the unpacking and the healing to get to the core of it. Who am I as a man of color, and as a Colombian man, as a Latino man? You know, who who should I be? And it's a lot, because when I look at as a society and culture, you know, examples of how I should be, I don't like it. It doesn't align with the work that
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
because it's in culture, it's beautiful. There's
Mm-hmm.
there's things that are beautiful, but a lot of it has been hijacked by a lot of things that are not serving us
Mm-hmm.
as a community, as a people.
Mm-hmm.
So and it happens in my family. Like, especially in the holidays when we're eating, and I want to get up and help in the kitchen and wash the dishes. Oh no, 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 no. You sit down, my aunts are telling me don't do that. And I'm like, no, I want to. And that's a big one right there. That's a huge one. We
Yeah.
always unpack that one. It's like, okay, who here has a problem washing the dishes and helping around the house? You
Yep.
know, and that's again, gender roles.
Yep.
Uh, Now I believe like if my wife says, "Hey, you've worked all day, I'll clean the kitchen, I'll
Mhm.
cook," you know, and if there's an agreement, not because that's her role and that's my role, it's just something she wants to do for me, and next week I'll do it for her.
Yep.
Then that's healthy. It's not about gender.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very beautifully said that, we often do things based on gender roles. And that's why we're trying to redefine them, is that the gender role ideas that we have in our head are not true. They're not true at all. It became competitive. It became who's better. It became I can do it better. You're not doing better. It just became very competitive along the way. And basically a household, a man and a wife are not a woman or a man, whatever it is that you want to say. Partnerships are not based on how you're looking or how strong you are or how weak you are. It's based on whoever can do whatever they're best at, whoever can do whatever at that time. Maybe, you worked all day and you're so tired, but you come home and your wife is holding two babies and trying to like work things out. I know you've worked so much, but now you also come and see that. So you're going to put some extra effort in there. And then, like you said, giving it back and forth is the key over here. Like you did one good thing today, then the other person, they themselves want to do the good thing again tomorrow. And then it's like a flow of back and forth, is like remembering that that person was there for you when you were weak or when you were not able to do it. So remember those things so that the next day when that person is weak, you're there for them like they were there, not because, oh, he's the man, he came from work, or I'm going to cook, or don't. No, if we can just redefine the way we want to connect with each other, the way we want to work with each other, I think that's much more beneficial for everyone. And in our last talk, I also said that for some reason, the way the man and the women are created, they're so beautiful together when they come together and when they co-create a space, a healthy, thriving space. It can be so beautiful. It can be like heaven on earth, that they say, if you co-create like a beautiful space, a man and a woman. And that's what we're trying to push. We're trying to like push into the media, where it's like, if you can have that thriving relationship with your partner, whether it's a man, LGBT communities, whatever it is, if you can have that partnership, that means that your mental load, your stress, your everything is like, then there's no problems. Then you can cohesively help through those challenges together. So rather than standing tight like this, like who's better, you're just kind of like blending in with each other, and doing things together. And that's kind of, what SyncPartner is standing for. It's like bringing these two together, be like, we're going to work harmoniously. We're going to work in balance. We're going to work in equality. And the biggest word I think that we're trying to bring in is the accountability. And a lot of people ask me how accountability is. You can't tell someone that you're accountable for something and then they come up and say, "Oh yeah, I'm accountable." That kind of a system doesn't work. The accountability stems from within, where you know how to hold yourself accountable. And that's the first step of harmonious relationships. When you know where you slipped, when you know where your weaknesses were, when you know your actions, how that ended up being, when you know that, in the last 4 or 5 days, you've just been so busy that you don't even give time to your partner or your family or anything. Now it's time to make up for that. We are prone to making mistakes. We're human beings. We're going to continue to make mistakes. As healers, we're going to make mistakes. As people who've done so much research, we're going to make mistakes. But it's not really about the mistake as much as what you do after you made that mistake. What action are you going to take after making that mistake? Are you going to say, oh, yeah, it is what it is, and stay in your ego? Or are you actually going to move forward with it and say, you know what, I'm going to choose love and empathy, and I'm going to hold myself accountable here? And then you start seeing, when you start throwing these positive attributes, these positive actions into your relationship, they start to reflect back at you. And in your men's healing club, I saw that a lot of the families are also involved. When these men start getting involved, the families start getting involved. How have you seen these families with children, these families getting enlightened because their men have taken the first step into this path?
Um, they're very grateful. Um, it's not easy. The first steps of healing is very hard because you have to be honest with the pain and the trauma, and for a lot of men they carry a lot of guilt and shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, because deep down they know they don't want to act the way they do. They know that, that what they did wasn't right, what they said wasn't right, how they're living is not right, because their partners or their I mean, it's affecting people around them. So,
Mm-hmm.
and as you said, the ego gets in the way. Instead of taking accountability of it, you either get defensive or you get into denial mode. But at the end of the day, deep down, you know
Mm-hmm.
that you were wrong, but even self-reflection is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So um, when that starts to change, when accountability starts to come in, and um, and that's a big reason why guys say, whatever, I'm just not going to go there or whatever. It's because, like, facing that type of guilt and shame, you know um, because they're already holding so much. It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot. It's a lot. That's why the go to is always defensiveness. I don't want to take
Mm-hmm.
accountability because they don't want to carry any more. They are just done.
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes immense courage. And when I see it, when I witness it, and the families and the children and the partners witness it, it's it's beautiful. It's a
Mm-hmm.
miracle. It's amazing, and it has a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly but surely, it has a ripple effect. And but as you said, it's our lives are not perfect. It just means we have a fighting chance. We're developing the tools to navigate around this crazy world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. And then also one other thing that I know, when it comes to generational trauma, we were talking about this and I was thinking about this for a long time too, if a lot of people who don't know what generational trauma is, but science has backed that up now, where it says that a lot of the, you know, a lot of the weaknesses, a lot of the struggle, a lot of the all that bad stuff that your ancestor lineage went through, you kind of carry it throughout your living, and then when you give birth, you kind of pass it on and on and on and on, and that pain and that trauma. Where, when those feelings were suppressed or something unfair happened to them or some traumatic experiences that your ancestors experience are actually traveling through you. And now that you're alive and you are in a physical form and you're in a 3D dimension now, you can feel that pain in you. And sometimes for me, even for myself, when I was, experiencing all of those generational pains in myself, I would tell myself, well, there's nothing that I have done physically in order to feel that pain, but I am feeling that pain. And that pain is triggered through communication or through actions with other people or some other stimuli that would just kind of trigger that and be like, what is this? Where is this coming from? I know this is not me. I know this is not my core. I know that this is not where I'm stemming from. But this pain and this uncomfortability sits all in my body. And that's the awareness we're trying to bring into our viewers as well. That even if you haven't experienced that pain in your life, you're experiencing that pain from generations after generations. And now, when you are in that position where you're experiencing it, you have a choice whether to continue to let it be and pass it on to your children, or you're going to make a decision and say, hey, I'm going to understand what this is. I'm going to go deeper into this and I'm going to find a way to heal that. And that is the most difficult challenge anyone can ever take upon on themselves, because all your worst nightmares are going to feel like have come true. All the fears that you've been holding back all your life are just going to pop back up, and you will have to sit through them. So that procedure of sitting through them, going through them, how would you describe that procedure of like for men? Like I wouldn't even say because we're exclusively doing men today. It's kind of same for women too, but just to kind of have the same language for men, because we'll have a lot of men viewers watching this. How does that feel? What it is to sit through it, and what are the steps, the action that's needed to sit through it, that word, like so that they can understand what they can do even today to sit through those fears.
Maddie, that's a great question, and it's why it's so difficult for these spaces to grow, because there's a lot of pushback, the pain.
Mm,
Speaking for me, my personal experience, very difficult, very difficult, very difficult. Again, I carried a lot of shame and guilt for things that were not mine, for things
mm,
that were mine, and that's why there was a lot of relapsing going on, going back to substance abuse, going back to what I knew, even though it was dangerous, it was not healthy. Um, it was what I knew and felt
mm,
comfortable with. So that's why they call it taking a leap of faith into the unknown, because, well, what, how does it feel to have balance and peace and self awareness and, acceptance and forgiveness in my heart? I didn't know that. I wasn't practicing that. I wasn't taught that. I wasn't accessing that. So when it started coming around me through like partners in the past, friends that were making suggestions, um, I tried, and it was very sad, very scary, and it triggered a lot of rage in me. Um, and that for me, that's it was very very difficult. So I believe it took about 5 years before my when I committed and made the decision was 14 years ago, because that's when I stopped um, using drugs and alcohol. So that was the day. But before that, about 5 to 6 years of trying and relapsing, going to AA, seeing a counselor, even going to ceremonies. Um, what happens in these spaces? It's always a mirror presented to you. That's what
mm,
we do. With this, what we're trying to do with our community. We're trying to, reflect back what they're bringing in and show them from a different perspective. So every time I kept looking in the mirror, a physical one, or even in ceremony, I didn't like what I saw, because I carried a lot of shame and guilt, and I felt like I don't deserve this. So very, very, very difficult,
mm,
until one day, by the grace of God, by the grace of my ancestors' spirits, by me,
mm,
there's a reason I'm alive. There's a reason I'm here doing the work. And so the day came for me.
mm.
And even then, it took a long
Yeah,
time continuing to do the work. But I did not relapse.
yeah.
It was very hard. It was very difficult. But I had to learn how to sit with my emotions. I
Mhm,
had to learn to be okay being angry, but do not hurt anyone, do
mhm,
not hurt myself. And it was a
mhm,
lot of crying, because there was
mhm,
nothing else I could do. I finally
mhm,
was crying.
mhm,
There were safe spaces. There were people that cared about me. There were people that had immense compassion, immense empathy, and immense patience
mhm,
to hold the space for me to process and process and process and process and process. So the bulk of it, like, I remember there was times where something, I actually felt it, like, oh my God, I don't feel like I'm carrying that as much. And there's
Mhm.
small increments.
Mhm.
And that's my story. For some people, they'll go to a mountain, they'll let it go and come
Mhm.
back and they're a new person.
Yep.
And that always bothered me. I'm
Mhm.
happy for them, but I always wish that would happen to me.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend 14 years trying to figure it out, but
Yeah.
that was my path. And I'm grateful for that because there's a lot of men that's not going to be easy for them. It's going to take them a long time, and I'm there to be with them to support them all the way.
That's amazing. That's so nice. Like we mentioned in the beginning, if you are a man looking for a healing space for yourself, you should definitely go try one of Luis's circles, and just go ahead and try it. Maybe this would be a next best thing. You never know who you might meet over there. You never know who you might connect with, and it's just gonna be like a domino effect of your healing. But it is true. I think another factor that we have in our lives is time. We think time is also, I will do things like this, and overnight I'm going to be healed. It takes long, long, long time, and which is why Luis and us at Sing Partner, we are starting to bring these things up because it has to start from somewhere. It has to begin with somewhere, and then when you start that from nothing, you start to see how you start attracting everything around you, which is waiting for that space, which is waiting for that to open up so that they can be part of it. And we've experienced that in Sing Partner, and you've experienced that in Louis, in your peaceful warriors, where when you open up this door, you're opening up the door for all of these people who are kind of lost, but then you kind of like bring them in, and then you kind of guide them through. And then from there onwards, there's some sense of awareness that's come into their mind. Now they have to choose whether they continue to keep coming here, they choose to do something else, but whatever it is, it's sparking that, initiating that activation, like I need to do this, or look at where people are now after doing this, or maybe my leap of faith will take me to this place where I feel much lighter. So it's just like, again, Sing Partner and Peaceful Warriors are so connected in that way, because we are trying to create that space where you just come in there, and you are coming in there because you mentally told yourself you're going to take a step, and you come in there and then rest. Just leave it on the synchronicities and the magnetism of the universe to kind of like guide you slowly, push you slowly into that direction where healing is definitely possible. Definitely, definitely possible. All right, so this sounds great. I think we've covered a lot of great things in this session. And the last thing, Luis, that I would ask for you to conclude this amazing podcast, and I hope the viewers enjoyed all this amazing information that Luis has shared with us. But I think the last question is also going to be or like kind of, I wouldn't say kind of like an advice or something, but what would you like to say to our viewers, especially our men viewers who are viewing us right now, in terms of like, where could their, like, should they, start going out on walks and kind of start self-reflecting, or start to take self-care a little bit more seriously, to maybe, you know uh, I feel like when we talk about self-care for men, it only ends up being a gym. Like go and, pick up some dumbbells, and that's your self-care. But what would you tell men about self-care, and what beyond gym self-care is, and how they can make these little steps towards it, or overall, like, even communicating with the partner, thinking about the right timings to do it. Maybe first process your own feelings, process your own emotions that you're at, and how can they process their own emotions, and then kind of like then approach their partner in order to talk about something, or what that is. And the second part of the question would be, for our females, for the feminine side, for the women, like what is it that they can be, enlightened with, like, maybe give them some space, or maybe give them some time? What would be the advice to our female viewers of, helping them, helping their men to kind of like, help them uh, get on this healing journey? Like, if we go back to our first question, is like women are already pushing them to go in their healing process of like, go into the circle or try SyncPartner or let's go to couples therapy, and they're already like, should they continue to kind of push them into the spaces, or they should try a different way? Like, what would your overall, with your experience so far, talking to these men, being around with these men, seeing their progress, maybe not seeing their progress, maybe even longer time for them, like, if we were to conclude everything, what would be the best way to individually say to our men viewers and also women viewers?
For the men out there, I highly recommend to be honest with yourself. Start practicing that. Look in the mirror, be honest with yourself. Then from there, you could build from that. All the tools are in your DNA, all the resilience and magic and strength and medicine that our ancestors have is in your blood. To access it, you have to be honest with yourself. You have all the tools, all the knowledge within your heart, within your being. It's just a matter of you being honest with yourself. Do you want it? Cool, go for it. There's in Sync Partner, there's the Peaceful Wars, there are plenty of resources out there. There's plenty of people, support systems, and communities out there ready to support you and love you and support your healing. It's just a matter of, are you ready for it? And only you can answer that question. So be honest with yourself. And if you're not ready, that's okay. That's okay. I will pray for you. I will make sure that that you're protected, and when you're ready, I'm here. I'm not here to push anyone or make anyone change their mind or anything like that. I'm just here to inspire, by me first being honest with myself. That's why I'm here. So yeah, for the men, please practice self honesty and be patient. Be patient with yourself. If you're not ready, that's okay. You don't have to carry that guilt from that decision. You don't have to carry the shame from that decision. It's just that you're not ready. But when you're ready, we're all here for you. So please practice self honesty. For the women, the same thing. Be honest with yourself. Is this healthy? Is this relationship you're in healthy? Are you able to have a healthy relationship with yourself? First and foremost, be honest about that. Are you able to have a healthy relationship with yourself? Because your happiness is not dependent on the relationship you have with your partner, man, woman, whoever. It's not dependent on that. Your happiness is dependent on you. So if you feel like you're practicing a healthy relationship with yourself, that will dictate the way you're going to have relationships with other people. If you feel that you love yourself and you're caring for yourself and you're doing everything you need for yourself, and your partner's not doing it, then you just have to be honest with yourself. Are you willing to support this person who's having a very, very hard time? Are you willing to go through those ups and downs? And it's not going to be easy. So even more practice self-care for yourself so you can support yourself in this relationship and support this individual that you choose to be with. My wife chose to be with me, even though she knows I'm an alcoholic. I could relapse anytime, but she chose, and that was on her. And I thank her for it. And then I try to live right, you know, by her. I always remember that she didn't have to. She chose to. I didn't make her. I didn't manipulate her into being with me. And a lot of guys, We don't want to do the work, but we want our cake and eat it too. We want that relationship. We want that job. We want
Hmm.
all these things, but we're really not, you know, um, doing what we need to do
Hmm.
to earn those relationships, to earn that love, that commitment that people are choosing to be with us. So we need to
Yeah.
look at that as men. But as women, for the advice for them is take care of you. Take care of
Yeah.
you, and that will help you guide you for the decisions you need to make with the relationship that you choose or choose not to have with your partner.
This is great advice. And just to shed a little bit of light on, what that honesty looks like when you look at yourself in the mirror is to first define your core values. I don't even think, when we first, enter kindergarten or first class or second class, we are not taught what our core values are, and core values of any human being who wants to be successful is built on honesty to self. And honesty to self is, are you lying to manipulate someone to get something? Are you trying to pretend to be something you're not so that the other person can accept you? Are you, just going through life doing something that you don't like, and every day that it's so hard for you to wake up and do this, but you're still pushing yourself doing it because you have so many XYZ reasons. You want to pay the bills, you have children, or whatever it is. But that honesty is, am I comfortable the way I'm looking? Am I comfortable with how I am? Am I comfortable knowing that I have these flaws and I have the ability to fix them, or at least take a step towards fixing them? These are some of the questions that when we look in the mirror, it's one of the best exercises ever, is to look in the mirror and be 100% comfortable. And if you see parts of yourself, your soul, your body, whatever it is that you're not comfortable with, that's not there to make you feel bad. That's kind of like a roadmap where it's like, okay, then let's start with this one. Let's start working on this one. And then we'll come to this one. And then we'll come to this one. It's kind of like your negative emotions are kind of like, and your negative thought process about your whole self, inside and outside, is kind of like a roadmap where it's like, okay, these are the red flags that we have to work on. And it's not going to be just one red flag. Even the most healed people, have so many red flags that they're still working on. I think it's a lifelong journey that you step into, where you're like, if I'm going to heal, it's going to be lifelong. Because as Lewis was saying, every part of our journey is going to become better and better, and we're going to keep moving forward and forward and forward with different challenges, with different decisions that we have to make. So we're ever changing. The healing process is going to be leaving this comfortable weak side of you away and stepping into a much higher self of yourself. But that means you're going to be changing and changing and changing, and the patterns are going to be changing and changing and changing. And you have to adapt to those changes that are going to come. And those changes becomes adaptable when your core values are built in great foundations. Then you can apply those core foundations in every changing aspect of your life when you're becoming higher and higher self of yourself. So coming back again to foundations of, to define, even write it down in a piece of paper, what defines you. Like if I were to write down for myself, I would say authenticity is the first thing. For me to be authentic, acting the way I am and being who I am is the first core principle. Like, I'm not going to go in a group of people and see that everyone's acting in a certain way, so I'm going to start acting in a certain way so I can fit in that. So, just shedding a light into that is kind of, I think, one thing we all need to do is define our core values. And once we have those core values, we take steps towards those core values. And once we take steps towards those core values, we kind of make them our habits, embed them in our DNA. And once it's embedded in our DNA, that means that we have done an extraordinary work for our next generation. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We have, our generation has a lot of healing to do, but at least if we can give our next generation a good start, a clean slate, I think a lot of that heaviness that we feel would even just fall down, because we've gone beyond ourselves for our children, for our next generation. So thank you so much, Luis, for your time today. Anything else that you would like to add?
Yes, for anyone that's in the Concord area, I'm at Todos Santos Park at least 3 times a week. I bring drums there and I bring my information there. And so if anyone wants to meet me in person and just drum or just talk, you could find me there. Again, Mehreen has my information,
Yep.
so you can get in touch with her. And yeah, I hope to see you at the next circle. Thank you,
All right.
Mehreen, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Of course. It was a pleasure, Luis. Thank you so much.